Hello, my name is Opal Hope Bennett, shorts programmer and director of filmmaker development, and I'd like to welcome you to the after show Q&A with director Garrett Bradley. Garrett, it's so great to have you with us. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Your film has been heralded as amongst the best of 2020, and that's of course why we selected it to the shortlist. And I myself uh, experienced it at your world premiere at Sundance. It was magical.
Mhm.
I was at the after party dancing with the Richardsons. and it's just been really beautiful to see how the film has been received through the year. And so kudos to you for some magnificent work. I know this story, but I'm sure audience members would love to know how it is you came about the Richardsons.
I had made a short film called Alone, which was a 13-minute op doc. And I always try to remind people and encourage people to check it out, to go to opdocs.com because anybody can submit an idea. I didn't know anybody at the New York Times. Um, like like all of my work, I came to that story because it was in proximity to my actual life, and it was a part of my own community and friendships that were already established. Alone was looking at one woman's journey um, in trying to decide how to move forward with her life when her partner was incarcerated and awaiting trial in a private prison for about a year and a half. And I had originally conceived of that film as being a sort of series of intergenerational conversations between women who really thinking of it as being like an exchange of information between each other and who could offer support to one another. Because part of, you know, the complexity of being in an incarcerated relationship is that a lot of the time there's very little support specifically that women can go to. And so Lon actually felt, even though there's 2.3 million people that are incarcerated, and so then there's therefore double, if not triple, quadruple that number that are affected, oftentimes women find themselves feeling very isolated and very alone. There are not a lot of places that they can go. And so I liked the idea of being able to have the film not only be something that could support her in that moment, but also support any other woman or family member or loved one in a similar situation who was watching the film, that they could glean something from that. And so I contacted an organization called FLIC, Friends and Families of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children. And Gina Womack, who is one of the co-founders and directors of that organization, picked up the phone, and she just said the first person you have to speak with is Fox Rich. And so Fox is briefly in Alone for several seconds. It makes a really vivid connection between slavery and the prison industrial complex. And so I wanted to think about, after Alone had come out, I was thinking about how can I continue this conversation around incarceration that is from a sort of inherently familial point of view, from a Black feminist point of view, from a point of view that speaks to the effects of incarceration, the effects of the facts. And I also liked that Fox was, um, a radically different woman, had a radically different experience. It was navigating the system in a unique way. And for me, that was also really important to think about a sort of coupling of the film, an extension, a sort of sister film that was also allowing us to show the diversity of experience within what it means to be an incarcerated family, that one film cannot stand as sort of the monolithic experience.
Right.
Um, yeah. So it was through the making of another film.
Right.
Yeah.
Alone led to Time,
Yeah.
and the New York Times Op Docs was along with you for both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So at the beginning, at the outset of the film, we see Fox uh, elapsing through a broad period of time, and then we see her in present day, and we watch her in action, and it really impressed upon me how much you're able to tell us about her and her circumstance and sort of set the stage in this sequence that you open the film with. Um, and I'd love to hear about how you decided to go about the opening. I mean, there are so many different ways you could have done it, and I thought it was quite unique to lay it out in that way, and then particularly to drop us in this present day moment where we're getting to see so much of her character through watching her. So please share how you decided your opening sequence of the
Mhm.
film would be.
Yeah, so deciding the opening sequence was, obviously a result of sort of deciding on an overall approach for how we wanted to deal with time, deal with the fact that we're going into the past, we're in the present, we're also very much, I think, rooted in the future. And so something that Gabe Rhodes and I, the film's editor, talked a lot about was how do we not only also go through these different time periods, but also it's really the materiality and texture and tone of the archive versus, the contemporary footage. And I think
Yes.
what allowed us to do that was to go back to the question of what is the intent of making the film. And the question of intent for me always needs to be a question that's asked of the people that I work with, because I think the average person is not necessarily comfortable with the camera being with them all the time, right? So if one is comfortable with it, that must mean that they feel that there's something that they need to say or that their story shares with that can contribute to the public. And it's important as a filmmaker that I know what that reason is, because then I translate that right into something that's both visual but also anchors me and all of us together who are working together, um, in it anchors you as you're navigating so much that is uncontrollable and that is unknown in the process of the day-to-day shooting a documentary. And so for Fox and for the family, their answer to my question around intent was we feel our story is the story of 2.3 million Americans, and that our story can offer hope. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, hope can also be abstract. So what does hope actually mean and look like?
Right.
And hope, I think, in this case was love, right?
Yeah.
It was remaining united as a family over the course of 21 years. It was holding on to one's sense of individuality amidst a system that is intended to break that down. And so if we think about love and we think about unity, there's no chronology to those sort of things, right? That love is timeless, it's boundless. And so that is what then can inform the shape and the pace and the feel of the film itself. And so if we knew that every shot we were choosing was rooted in this idea of love and different articulations of love, that allowed us to move forward narratively, but also come backwards at any moment, because love doesn't, it moves in all directions.
Right. Right.
You know?
Right. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that is profound. to, to distill that into a filmmaking approach, that is profound. Um, and you mentioned archive, and there's so much rich archival material throughout this film. I mean, it's a substantial portion of it, and I know that of course was Sybil's material that she shot, or
Mhm.
was it other family members? It was all
Lot,
hers.
I mean, some of the sons as well, Remington and Lawrence shot some of it as well.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So how much of it in total did you have to go through, and what was your process in determining, how much you were going to use, how you were going to select it?
Yeah. I mean, it ended up being about 100 hours of material. Um, and I think in total it might be 15 minutes or so in the whole film. I could be wrong about that. Um, so it was a lot, and I think but even whether it's archive or whether it's footage that that you've shot yourself and that you're really in tune with, I think the process is relatively similar. You try to watch it as much as possible, at first kind of without an agenda, without any kind of parameters around it. You really kind of want to be as open as possible to what is possible, and then as you're having conversations, again, for me, which always go back to intent, that's where you can start to curate what it is that you're pulling and how you're creating selects, and then eventually assembling all the material.
Excellent. And then another rich component to the film was the music, and it operated. I mean, I feel like score is often sometimes done to sort of, tell the audience what to feel, and when it's best used, it's more a enhancing component to the film, and that was how I felt it really appeared in time. There was also this, how do I put it? It almost felt like this other, um, like entity almost for you to pay attention to,
Mhm.
which I loved. Please share about your collaboration with your music composer and how you crafted that component of the film.
Yeah, well, so my the collaboration with Emma Hoy was very unique because I had come across her music just on like a YouTube algorithm. It just had popped up. I was listening to a lot of like 1970s Ethiopian music, and I immediately felt
As you do.
yeah,
1970s
I,
Ethiopian.
I, um, and it just yeah, it just popped up, and I immediately fell in love with the sound of it. And when Gabe and I were experimenting with it to picture, it just there was just one of those magic moments where it just worked, you know. But
Yeah.
it wasn't really until I think I started to read about who Emma Hoy was, that for me it really helped solidify why it was so important to use this score. So, you know, because Emma Hoy, she's a 96-year-old Ethiopian nun. She's still alive. And she came from a wealthy family in Ethiopia, was a prisoner of war, was classically trained in Western music, and was a sort of prodigy, pianist prodigy, and decided rather than becoming like a celebrity pianist, she would go back to Ethiopia and become a nun and continue music, and essentially created her own genre, which is really blending different melodies and traditions. And this music that we're listening to in the film is from the one album, the one time that she's recorded her music, which was in 1963 for the purpose of raising money for an orphanage. Um,
Wow.
so I think it was one of these kind of just cosmic things that happened, you know, and we were incredibly grateful to her foundation for allowing us to use the music. And Jameson Shaw, who did some original score that's also in the film, we talked a lot about how do we blend sound with original composition and soundtrack together. You know, and I think as we get towards the end of the film, it became really necessary to create that shift, you know.
Mhm.
Uh, but, you know, I couldn't have anticipated how that turned out at all, you know.
It's so brilliant. And I never would have guessed 96-year-old nun is
Yeah, yeah.
the source of that. Amazing, amazing. Now, of course, I've got to go look that up. We've gotten the 5-minute warning here, and I've been asking filmmakers, as I'm doing these, and I've done a lot. Um, since we don't have the audience here with us, what it is that you would like for the audience who watch Time to take away from their experience?
um, wow. Well, I think part of the beauty of making something is that you, to a certain extent, are letting your intention out into the world, and people are going to receive it based on where they are, you know. I think that for me the film represents very mundane and accessible forms of resistance that all of us can take on. And I think that, you know, my hope is that we see the celebration and love and joy of a family, but that we also can see the accessibility um, of their approach. You know, that it isn't something that's unattainable for the average person. That all of us can connect to what it means to stay close to those that we love, and why that's important, and what it means to remain close to ourselves as individuals, and who we are and how we see ourselves amidst a world that that can try to dictate sometimes who you are and how other people see you. So I think at a minimum, that's what I hope for. But ultimately, I think love love is what makes the world go round. And I and I hope if anything that is what people feel and take away from it.
I think that's powerful, particularly in times like these. So thank you so much, Garrett, for your work, and thank
Thank
you
you.
for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us for Time. Please do continue to see some more films of the Sadak NYC. And for now, we bid you adieu.